Hi friends, my name is Erica Chevet. Some of you might know me from the statistics reading. Also, you might know me from Achieve. So I lead the team of wonderful coders who create the content inside the Achieve platform. So I want to show you around Achieve and help you to start off your school year as smoothly as possible, show you the awesome resources that you have in TPS8 to show you how you can use Achieve to maximize your efforts in the classroom, but also make your workload light. So there's going to be lots of different things I'm going to cover in this video. You might want to pause at this point and look at the timestamp for the various things in case you just want to learn about one specific thing. I'm going to be covering all of these topics, probably plus more. So feel free to jump ahead to certain parts. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in. Okay, here's the main landing page for Achieve. Now, you might have something slightly different than I do here, but the main idea is you will have the practice of statistics, and you might have 60, 70, 80, something like that. One thing it's nice to note is that you have a lot of control in the platform. For example, if you don't like the way that the course is named, this is something you can modify. So I'm going to go ahead and modify my name over here on these dots. And there's all kinds of things in here. This is way above my pay grade, but there's ways that you can manage different instructors. You can share your course. There's section manager information up here, so you can play around with those things. But I'm going to go into course settings. And in course settings, I get to rename the course. I like to name my courses very simple. I say Erica Chevet, and we'll just call it TPS8. That'll line up with how I name all my other courses. And you got some options here about when the course starts, days of the week, stuff like that. Down at the bottom, it's important to notice that this is a new thing that we have here in Achieve called the AI support. I would use this with caution. I probably have not played with it enough to really be 100% sure about the advice that I'd want to give, but I will tell you that throughout the course, the Achieve course, the feedback that we provide in the questions is written by teachers who are very experienced AP readers, very experienced AP teachers. My coding team is fantastic. So when we write feedback and we guide the students in their homework questions, we are using the language that they need to know for the AP exam, and we're keeping it simple. I can't say the same thing for AI. I would imagine that they would probably give generic advice and generic explanations, where ours is very specific because we're all experienced readers and AP teachers. So I would say proceed with caution when it comes to allowing your students to use AI Tutor. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click Save to change the name of the course. So now it's very simple, just like all these other ones. Let's go ahead and look at the course. So when you open your Achieve course, there's two things you want to be aware of. There's a section here in the middle, which is almost like your table of contents. This is where all of the assignments live. The tests and quizzes, if you want to give them to your students in Achieve, these are the things that your students will engage with and interact with. And there's a left panel. Let's look at the resources in the left panel. So there are lots of things that you may want to download to have on hand. I like to do keyword search. For example, if you search the word handout, one thing by pressing enter that is brand new for TPS8 are that there are lesson handouts. And so there's zip files here that you can download the lesson handouts and the answers for each unit and each part for the whole course. So here's something that you might want to download and print. So they're all there. Add to course means that you would add it to the course so that the students could potentially see that. Whether you want to do that for the blank lesson handouts or not is up to you. I would not add the answers to the course. Okay, another thing that you might want to download and search up by keyword would be the tests. And the tests and the quizzes in TPS8 are found here. You will be happy, hopefully, to know that there are 3 versions of every quiz and 3 versions of every test for the entirety of TPS8. And so if you download this, you will get all of those and their answers. Here's a cumulative practice test in PDF format. This is also coded as an assignment, so your students could complete this digitally. And so then there's the solutions to the practice tests, and then there's pre-made tests and quizzes. So you may want to download those if those are something that you plan to give your students in paper pencil format. You can give your students the tests digitally in TPS8. So I'll be showing you that a little bit later. Another thing that you might want to download would be the presentation slides. So if you like to use PowerPoint, you can download the lecture presentation slides. They go with the lesson handouts. And so these are some keywords that you'll want to use right off the bat to do some of those downloads. Now, maybe you want to just know, well, what is everything that's available rather than just going by keyword search. You can scroll down this column here. And if you click on Unit 1, Part 1, you're about to begin teaching Unit 1, Part 1, Teacher Resources, and come on up. You will see all of the resources that correspond to Unit 1, Part 1. And so you will not miss out on anything by just searching this way. There's projects. It's important to know there's a Frappy for each unit part, which means there are 9 of these. These are also coded and your students can complete them digitally. And there's the solutions. These are the long solutions to every question in the book. And you can download the practice tests and everything else. So there's lots and lots and lots and lots of stuff that you have here, videos and so on. Okay, so that's how you can dig in. I'm going to go ahead and clear the filters with your resources. And notice that you have all these different kind of breakdowns by the structure of the course. Okay, next, let's go to the, let's look at the lesson handouts actually in a little bit more depth. So I pulled up some samples of the lesson handouts for the topic of inference. And this is on the topic of hypothesis test for a single proportion. And so what we have here are 4 lessons. And here's the handout. And here's the PowerPoint that goes with the very first lesson. So let's see. Section 3C breaks down hypothesis test for a single population proportion. And it's day 1. And day 2, they're going to learn how to do the test statistic and p-value. Day 3, they're going to put it all together. And day 4, they're going to learn about type 1, type 2 error, and power. And so if you would like to use these lesson handouts with your students, there's a couple important things to note. One is that every instructional segment, which I would call this right here an instructional segment, is directly from the book. So there is nothing tricky in here. Your students could very easily open up their ebook. They could follow along. They could give you the answers. Or maybe you're a PowerPoint type person and maybe you would like to teach this and have this as your visual on the board. The PowerPoint is going to go with a lesson handout and also answer the questions on the lesson handouts. Now the activities are empty because it's going to depend. The results will vary. Now certain days have activities, but not every day. And so we designed the lesson handouts in such a way that your students can really easily use them as a study tool because it's just so clearly labeled as to what they're learning. And then we give them instruction and they maybe do an activity on certain days. And then we go into like a little bit more instruction. Here's a little bit more about stating hypotheses. So lots of instruction there. And then there's an example. So it's important to note that there is an example for every single learning target. So your kids will get ample practice. Not just one example at the end or just one check your understanding at the end, but there is one example for every single learning target. Let's see in the PowerPoint. Now, the activities in the lesson handouts, these are very like skeleton-like. That's because it would take up so many pages if we wrote all of the details here. We're recording our results on the handouts. The details are found in the PowerPoint. The details are also found in the textbook. And so the students can follow this to complete the activity, and they're just recording their results on the handout. But other than that, the handout and the PowerPoints are going to go side by side so that the students can receive their instruction this way. Or maybe you just like to use the blank version of this, and maybe you have a document camera, or maybe you could write on the board. So the blank versions of this will follow the answer keys exactly. And there's many ways that you can use this for your students. It's also important to note that we want the students to be able to refer back to these later and to really make sense. So we give these handouts great depth. We are very thorough in the instructional segments. So as you can see, we want them to know what are all the options whenever they are stating hypotheses. What is a one-sided alternative hypothesis? What is a two-sided alternative hypothesis? Hypotheses are always about a population, not a sample. So we really go into a lot of depth, and then we hit the example. Now the example that you will have in the lesson handouts will match with the alternate example in the book. And so this is not the same thing as the example in the student book. It's a parallel example to the one that's in the student book. Actually, if you're familiar with the teacher edition, this would be the example that you would see in the margin of the teacher's edition. This gives your students an extra example that they can look at in addition to the example that is in the book. Now remember, unless you're if you're familiar with the way that TPS is set up, every example in the book has a video with it. So suppose you're absent one day. It would actually not be hard. It would be a really easy thing to do to have the sub tell the students to complete the lesson handout. They can complete the instructional components very easily from the book. They can complete the activity. They can complete the rest of this here. This is all just from the book. And they could even watch the video in the textbook that goes along with the example and then give their try at completing this second example that is parallel to it. And so the handouts really are designed to kind of help the students become self-learners, to also give them a solid study tool whenever they're going back at the end of the chapter to prepare for the test, and also to give them something that they can keep as they're getting ready for the actual exam and they can look back. And so at the end of each handout, we are going to guide the students that they are ready to complete the check your understanding in the book or on Achieve. And so this lesson is broken down into 4 days where they're first stating the hypotheses and checking the conditions, test statistic and p-value, and then we're putting it all together, and then type 1, type 2 error and power. Now the really nice thing is that this lesson handout corresponds with the PowerPoint, and also the assignments are pre-made for you in Achieve. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at that. Actually, before I show you those assignments, I'm going to change course and I'm going to show you the ebook real quick because I talked about it. There's a student ebook and a teacher ebook. Notice that this one is hidden from the students, which is good. So let's go ahead and look at the teacher ebook. The student ebook is the same, but without all of the annotations and the margins. Very easy to navigate. So you could tell your students, well, and they actually know it right from the lesson handouts. Okay, we're in Unit 3, and we're doing Inference for One Proportion, Part 1. We're talking about hypothesis tests for a population proportion, and it takes you right to the beginning of that page. The student ebook navigates the exact same way. Another cool thing to note about the ebook is that these TRM icons, they're linked. So if you want to download the alternate examples, you can do that with a single click right here. If you want this template, you can download it with a single click right here. If you would like to watch an activity video about this, you can watch the video right there. So it's very easy to navigate. You could also tell your kids page numbers and they could just go to the right page. Also, anything that we have here in the margins will be like the answers or potential answers to things in the book in those activities. So you can have this up and refer to it as you go. The examples all have little video icons, so you'll see these little icons here. Those are clickable in the student book as well. So the videos are all done by a gigantic team of very talented AP Statistics teachers and AP Statistics readers and leaders. So there's a wide variety of teachers that all make these videos. They do a great job, and they basically teach the kids how to do this particular example. And then, of course, they have the questions that go with them at the end of the section. So the ebook is really easy to use. I would strongly encourage your students to be comfortable with finding it, navigating it, and using it, because it will be a great advantage to use this with the lesson handouts. Okay, so now we're ready to look into the course. So the course is set up just like the CED. There's some introductory stuff at the top, such as like the statistical applets. Starting down here, we have the content for the course. The CED, the new CED, has 5 units. So Josh and Darren very beautifully split up the content into 5 units, the same way that it is organized in the CED. Now, one thing that is super important to note is that the CED no longer has sampling distributions as a unique chapter. Sampling distributions now falls in Unit 2, 3, and 4. That's because they split it up so that they get an introduction to sampling distributions at the end of Unit 2, and then right before they cover every inference procedure, they learn about that particular sampling distribution. So this is broken into, we'll say, like 3 things. They do sampling distributions for a single proportion, then confidence intervals, then hypothesis test. Here, they're going to do sampling distributions for 2 proportions, a difference of 2 proportions, then confidence interval and hypothesis test. Now, that is a really important change, that sampling distributions is in all of these unit parts, because the students need to understand that when you're dealing with sampling distributions, you are given information about a population and you are drawing a conclusion or calculating a probability about a sample, which is the exact opposite of inference. With inference, you're given information about a sample and you use it to draw a conclusion about the population. And so for every single one of these, there could be the forward version or the backward version of these questions in each of these split separately. So it is not its own entity anymore. It is split across here. And Josh and Darren did this exactly just like you would find in the CED. So you can use your AP classroom stuff and the topics will align. Now let's see how Unit 3 Part 1 matches with the lesson handouts and the PowerPoints that I just showed you. So when you open up any particular unit part, you will first find an icon that will take the students right to the ebook. So they can actually access it right here if they wanted to. This section is broken into section A, B, C, and D. So this unit part is broken into 4. And then there's the wrap up, which is the end of chapter stuff. And then there are tests and quizzes, and then Tech Corner videos and some other goodies down at the bottom. We were just looking at section 3C. So let's click into it. Again, you are given a link to the ebook, which will take them right to the beginning of section 3C. And then 3C was a 3-day lesson. And so we have check your understanding and then the recommended assignment. Again, check your understanding and the recommended assignment, and so on. And so each of these lessons will have, this is the same question that's a check your understanding in the textbook. Let's look at it. So I'm going to go ahead and click into it. Okay, so this is the check your understanding from page 417. Let's look at this as a student. Okay, so for this particular check your understanding, the students are practicing stating hypotheses and checking the conditions for a test for a population proportion. And so we, as coders, when we're creating this content, we try to do it in such a way that is going to be very interesting for the kids, and also we try to change it up from question to question. And so these are little drop downs where they have to know, well, what symbol am I supposed to use? And what is it equal to or not equal to? And same thing with the alternative hypothesis. And we got to define the parameters, so they have practice. In this practice, for every single thing they might potentially do as a mistake, they're going to get feedback or guidance as they work their way through the question. Also, it's important to note that with every question, the students can get a hint for free, basically no penalty to read the hint. The hint is always going to have some terms, definitions, things that will be helpful to the students. Also, at the bottom, we guide them to where they can go in the book to see an example, of course, which has a video, or read about it in more detail. So they can have this hint for free. Notice this over here, the grade settings. If your grade settings do not say 5% partial credit deduction, I highly recommend that you change the setting to say that. Because if yours says unlimited temps and no penalty, well, that's not going to make the kids very motivated to get it right. So I love to use this 5% partial credit deduction because the kids will get little penalties as they continue to try. If they're just guessing, they're going to lose credit and they're not going to like that. So it will very much motivate them to try harder if you use a partial credit deduction. Now, it's important to note that this partial credit deduction does not mean that they're going to lose 5% every time they try and get it wrong. What it means is that if they do nothing at all, and if they get all of this question wrong, yes, they will lose 5%. But if they try and they get half of this question right, well, they're going to get partial credit. They're only going to lose 2.5%. And then when they try a second time, suppose they get like another half of it right. Well, then they're only going to lose another 1.25%. So the deduction kind of decreases as they get more and more and more of the question correct. And so that's how that works. Also, kids have access to these resources on any question. There's a link to Desmos, Graphing Calculator, the formulas, and the tables. So those are available on all questions. Next, let's take a look at the assignment so you can kind of see the types of questions and the variety of questions on an assignment. This is the assignment that goes with that same lesson and the lesson handouts that I showed you. There's only 6 questions, so it's not going to be super demanding for the kids, but these 6 questions, as long as you use that grading system that I suggested, will motivate the kids to work at it and to learn and to try hard. So let's review this. Let's look as a student at this particular assignment. All right, so first they're practicing the hypotheses. Look how we broke this one down. So now we're being very thorough. Do they know what sign? Do they know what value? Do they know what symbol they need to use? And then are they able to define it? So there's training wheels, but we are definitely giving them a lot of responsibility here. For this next question, they're going to be practicing but a little differently. So we have to select which 2. This next question, they're checking the conditions with some drop downs. Next, we're asking them a more detailed question about the conditions. And then there's some multiple choice practice at the end. Let's see how this question works if we're a student. So let's pretend I'm a student and I'm not sure that I understand at this point. So I'm going to just try my very best to answer this question correctly. And so let's see how I do. Where p hat is, p hat, what did I learn about p hat? That's a sample, right? A sample, yeah, sure. Let's see, of U.S. adults, okay, yeah. Consider using the dating app, how to use the dating app, went on a date. Yes, definitely that one. Okay, so as we select things, it will tell your students if they got anything right, and they can make as many changes as they want. However, we're going to give them guidance from the very first mistake that they made and work their way down. Null hypothesis should always be stated in terms of a population parameter. Symbol p hat represents a sample proportion. Oh, okay. Let me try this again. All right, so p hat is a sample proportion. I needed the symbol that is a population proportion because we're making a statement about a population. They might be like, oh, I'm not sure about the rest of these. They might try to change something, or they could just try again. So let's see. Click again. Ooh, I did right. Yes, I did good. There should not be a not equal to sign in the null hypothesis. The null hypothesis should always be the form parameter equals the not. Oh, that's right. Okay, I got this reversed maybe. But let's see. What did it say again? Have a majority use an online app or a dating site? I don't know. I think I'm going to change this. We'll see what it says. Next, the null hypothesis is not p equals 929. The value 929 is the sample size, n. A proportion is a value between 0 and 1 and should be expressed as a decimal. We want to know, have a majority of you as young adults used an online... Oh! See how we're guiding the students as they are working their way through. They are going to learn as they go. And we're going to help them along their way. Oops, what did I do? Let's see. A majority. Silly me. That is not the hypothesis. We want to know if a majority. A majority is half or more than half. So the kids can continue to try, but they're not going to get their full credit. And they're going to learn pretty quickly that as they work their way through, they're going to want to get full credit. And so the faster that they get these answers right, then they will get more credit, and that will be very satisfying to them. Let's see. Let's try this. Let's look at the last part. The parameter is not who would consider. The individuals in the study more than just considered it. So the kids really need to read. We're not just going to let them try, guess and not know what they're talking about. Because we know with the AP test that we value clear communication. And so we want to make sure that they have read and are paying attention. After they finish a question, they're able to view the full solution. The full solution will show them what it all looks like when it's all pieced together, or give them some additional details. And so then they just continue on. So they got an 87%. You see how many tries that was? The deductions are minor in comparison to the penalties that they're going to receive, yet it will be a motivator because they won't want to get those penalties. Now, one thing that you might want to do, every question that is on a recommended assignment is going to give the kids feedback. You might want to add some questions to the assignments that are the free response style, because we know the 2027 exam is going to be all digital. And in an all digital exam, you might want to have your kids have some practice answering these questions with little open-ended boxes. So let's go we have an assignment with 6 questions. Let's look at the question bank, and let's add some questions to this. Now, in the question bank, you have a table of contents, and there's right now 4,932 questions in this. Let's go to Unit 3, Part 1, and we're in 3C. Okay, here's your breakdown of the 4 buckets, and this is going to be in each of these sections. Additional exercises. There are 347 extra questions. These are not in the book. These are questions that are additional. So if you want to use, if you like to make your own tests or quizzes up, these would be great to choose from because these are extra or additional questions that are not in the book. You can add these to any assignment that you want to. However, what I wanted to show you was this one here. We know the Check Your Understanding is already an assignment. We already have the recommended assignment. All 3 of these are questions that are from the book. The open-ended questions, there are 7. And so we coded at least 1 for every single learning target. And so in this first section, they are stating hypotheses. So it's this one. State appropriate hypotheses. We could add this one if you want another one. Check the conditions. Yep. Calculate the standard. That was the day 2. This is the next day. So I don't want to put this one on there. Making a conclusion. So these are the next couple days. All right, so these are the ones that are appropriate for this assignment. I'm going to click add, and this is going to change from 6 to 9. So add. Okay, there we have it. So 9. So let's go and just click on it. Now, the computer's going to let you know that there are some open-ended questions because it will not grade them. You could grade them if you want, or you could just have your students look at the answers, or you can give the answers in class, but these will not be graded by the computer. They're just completion. Now those questions are always put down at the bottom. Now this would drive me nuts. If you're OCD like I am, I cannot have the questions be out of order. Number 2 has to be at the beginning. So I'm going to click on this and I can put it in the correct order. I'm going to reorder. All you got to do is click where you want it to go. Of course, I want number 2 to go between 1 and 3. So I'm going to click right here. Ta-da! And question 6, I cannot have that sitting down there. It's out of order. Question 6 goes here. And question 8, also want it to be in its place. Question 8 would go there. So what I've just done is I've added these couple free response questions in between the ones where they're going to get feedback. So now if you add those, your students are going to get a little bit of unguided practice along with their guided practice. So they'll get help as they're working through this question. But when they get to this one, well, now they're looking at open-ended. Can they state the hypotheses? Be sure to define the parameter of interest. Now, one thing that's important to note is that our people who are like the major coders, the developers, they're working on an extra icon right here, which would be the symbol palette, so that your students can practice using the symbol palette on the AP exam. It is not ready yet, but hopefully we're going to see one of those like what's new icons pop into Achieve sometime, and they are working on designing a symbol palette. So that would be really nice when it's available. But for now, your students can have this guided practice followed by open-ended. What's wrong with these hypotheses? And then more guided practice and an open-ended. Can they answer it? What did they learn? And so this would be a nice way to kind of spruce up some assignments if you'd like to give your kids some extra to do. I'm going to take these off to show you how easy it is to customize the assignment. Anything you want to remove, you just check. Suppose that there are some questions on there that you want to take off, maybe from the original assignment or anytime you want to modify. You can just click anything that you want to remove and just click on remove. And bye-bye, they're gone. So we're back to 6. We're back to the original assignment. You can add questions out of the question bank just as easily as I did these open-ended. You can add any question out of the question bank. You can make a review question, for example. You can add some review questions on. So these are extremely customizable and very easy to customize. Now, along the lines of customization, some teachers are concerned that they don't want to mess up the original assignment whenever they customize. So let's suppose you want to customize chapter day 3C, day 3, where was it? Right here, but you don't want to lose this original version. Well, let's look at these dots over here. You can very easily make a duplicate of this. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Now when I make a duplicate, it's saying, do you want to assign this to your kids? Do you want it to be available, but just not like actually on their calendar? Do you want it to be private, hidden? You can click, do you want it to be a homework with this penalty, or would you like it to be unpenalized? I would leave it as homework. And so let's suppose that you want to just put it in the course, but not formally assign, because we're just making a copy. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And now whenever we go back to our course, we're going to see that we have a copy of it. And so maybe you want to adjust this one and then keep the original as it is. You could rename it, you can make the adjustments, and then you can have your kids complete this particular version of the assignment if you'd like. So it's very easy to customize, to adjust. I'm going to go ahead and remove what I just made, that copy, so you can make a copy of it before you edit it. That way you'll have the original and you will have your version of it. And so any particular unit part is going to have all the sections followed by the wrap-up, then the tests and quizzes, and then so on. So let's look at the wrap-up and see what you get in a wrap-up. In the wrap-up, you're going to have a Frappy question. And there's a Frappy in every single one of these. I'll show you that in a minute. You're going to have the end of unit review exercises. These are the same ones that are in the book. You will also have the practice test. This is the same practice test that is in the book. Right now it's hidden. I'll show you how to hide or unhide things in just a minute. And then we have, there's all the projects. So you can, this will take you right to the ebook for the Unit 3 Part 1 project. And there's all these videos for each of the review exercises. Let's look at the Frappy. Frappies are very good practice to assign your kids because this will help get them ready for the exam. They are open-ended, so if you want to score them, that would be something that you can do, or you can have them score their own. So let's take a look. I'll open this one in like what I call teacher mode, just clicking on it. And so the solution is down here, and it's kind of hard to see as much of it as you might want to see. So what I would recommend, especially if you want to have your students score it, or if you want to use the scoring guidelines, is I would print the PDF of this that is in the resources. So remember how I showed you where resources were in the left panel over here? You can print these, and that might be a little easier way. Your students can see these solutions after they've submitted their answers, but it's just kind of maybe a little bit small, a little bit maybe hard to read on the computer like this. So you might want to print them under resources. Here's what your students would be completing. This is just like the AP exam. So the verbs are bold as to what they need to do, and they just have a little box to answer each of these things. So very much like we would expect the exam to look like. And there are one of those for each unit part. Okay, next let's take a look at the review exercises. So the review exercises are the same exercises that are in the book. So they're named the same way. And the practice test. This is the practice test that is at the end of the chapter. And so it is a bunch of multiple choice questions followed by some what I would call kind of like open-ended questions, but these are graded by the computer, and the students will receive feedback and guidance because this is just a practice test. Okay, so next let's look at the folder of the tests and quizzes. This is a new thing with TPS8. The tests and quizzes are available in Achieve, and you can assign them to your students digitally as well as print the PDF and give them paper pencil. And so you'll see quiz on sections 3A and B. There are 3 versions, version 1, version 2, version 3. They are unique. They have different questions, but yet cover the same learning targets. Quiz on section 3C, version 1, 2, and 3, again, and then 3 versions of the test. Let's take a look at the test, for example. Okay, there's some open-ended questions on the test, just like you would expect on the AP exam. Now, every test in the quizzes are the ones that would cover all of the learning targets. They're not necessarily, the open-ended questions are not necessarily in the style of the new AP exam. You're not going to see the bolded verbs and things on the test. They just cover the skills because we want our kids to be learning the skills, and then they practice for the exam separately. So there are going to be 10 multiple choice questions. You can see multiple choice, multiple choice, multiple choice, followed by a couple free response. Let's take a look at the free response. So you can see the solutions are here, but the questions, let me close that for a second, are in these open-ended format. So the students would be answering these in open-ended style, and you would definitely be scoring their responses to these because this is a test. And so you would see what they write as their answers for each question, and you will score them. And I will show you how easy it is to score these types of questions a little later in this video. So the tests and quizzes are structured as multiple choice, followed by some free response. Nice to know that there are 3 versions for every test and quiz. Now, if you are at all concerned that the students maybe have looked these things up or somehow they got posted online, remember how easy it is to customize. So I'm going to click into this quiz, for example, and this quiz has 3 questions on it. And this was on the topic of sampling distributions, because they do sampling distributions first, followed by the open-ended questions. Remember, you can go into the question bank and you can, well, maybe make some changes. So if you go into the question bank, and we're in section 3, unit 3, part 1, and this was on 3A and 3B. And so for each of these ones, we have these open-ended exercises that are book-based. Now maybe you used those on the homework assignment. So if you go a little further down, under the Unit 3 Part 1 review, we have some extra secret goodies for you. There is a category of open-ended review exercises that are additional, meaning not in the book. So there are 36 extra questions that are open-ended that are not in the textbook. If you want to add any of these questions to the test and quiz, you could use them and swap them out, and you can load more for some of the questions that are actually on there. So you can kind of adjust and customize to maybe take a question off, replace a question, add a question, things like that. So there is an extra bucket that you would want to be familiar with. And it's at the end of every single unit part. There's going to be a wrap-up or a review section, and there will be this extra bucket of additional review questions. Also, if you are still in love with the investigative task, or you like to have your students do maybe something a little extra after the AP exam, in every one of these unit parts, we kept, just for funsies, the 4 investigation questions and that are additional, so that if you wanted to make something up at the end of the year for your students to explore in deeper in depth, you can find some extra fun questions in each of these 4 investigation buckets. Okay, so those are some customizations that you can have in terms of the pre-made tests and quizzes. Next, there's one more thing content-wise that I want you to be familiar with, and that is that there are cumulative exams. There are 5 of them in the course. There are 5 because there's 1 for each unit part, and they are all located in the second half of the Unit 1. There's going to be 1 in here. There's going to be 1 in the second half of Unit 2, and the end of Unit 3, the end of Unit 4, and the end of Unit 5. So the ones in Unit 1, 2, 3, and 4 are just the size of a regular homework assignment. Maybe a little bigger than a homework assignment. They consist of multiple choice and one FRQ as true as possible. The cumulative exam that's in Unit 5 is a full-length cumulative exam. Let me show you where you can find them. So I'm going to go to the end of Unit 1 here. And in the wrap-up section, and we consider this to just be a practice, not an actual thing that you would score. And so there's a cumulative right here, cumulative practice test. It's hidden right now. You can easily unhide it to have your students complete it. So let me go ahead and click into it. Cumulative practice test, again, I said this was just like a regular homework assignment. So there's a bunch of multiple choice questions followed by 1 FRQ in the style of the new exam. Let's take a look at it for practice. So there's 5 of these cumulative exams, and they're always here. Sorry, we're still having some art being placed right now. They're always in the wrap-up section at the end of each unit. And then the one at the end of Unit 5 is a full-length cumulative exam, and these are true FRQs. Let me go ahead and just show you where it's at one more time. So we're looking in the wrap-up because we consider it practice. And this cumulative practice test 5 is right here. This consists of it's full length, so it's 42 multiple choice questions followed by 4 free response questions, true FRQs. Okay, so those are all the extra resources. Those are the things that you can assign digitally to your students and achieve. Now, I had some teachers ask me real early on. They said, I don't want my students to dig ahead. I don't want them to look ahead. So some teachers wanted to hide, and they wanted to hide the content of everything except for Unit 1, Part 1. So it's very easy to do that. If you want to hide, it's not going to hide the folders. It'll hide the content in the folders. You can click on everything that maybe you don't want your kids to see, and go ahead and click on this Assign Edit button right here. So when we do this, there are 766 resources inside those folders. I don't know about you, but I would not want to sit here and click on each one and click on Hide from Students. That might take a million years. Thankfully, you can do this in bulk. So if you come over here to the batch, I wish they called it bulk because I like the word bulk. But we want to do this as a whole big group. I want to edit the visibility for all of these things at once. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And you have some options as to how you want the visibility to be. You might want it to just be hidden from the students. Now, I'm not going to adjust my course, but all from this point you would do is click Save, and all of those would say Hidden. And then you want to make sure you click Save up here at the top right before you leave the page. But I don't want to go through with that because I don't want to change my template, but that's how easy it is to hide things from your students. Now, another thing that you might want to do is you might want to change grade settings. It's the same process, but it's the second tab over here. Now, one thing to be very careful about is I clicked all of those units after Unit 1. There are 259 Achieve assignments in those units. Those assignments are the homework assignments, they're the check your understanding, they are also the tests and the quizzes. They're all considered assignments. You don't want to make them all homework policy because you don't want the tests and quizzes to have a homework policy. You also don't want to make them all quizzes because you don't want the homework assignments to have a quiz policy. So here's what I recommend. So I'm going to go ahead and leave, cancel this. And I'm going to go ahead and uncheck because I don't want to adjust my template course. Okay. So here's what I would suggest as when you're starting. Before you go into Unit 1, Part 1, I would check a couple things. Because depending upon when you received access to your course, you may or may not have these settings, pre-done for you. So what I would do is I would look into Section 1A, for example, and I would look at the Check Your Understanding question and see what policy it currently has. So this has homework policy, and I like that it has homework policy. You can see the details of it is that 5% partial credit deduction. If it doesn't have that, well, you can change it, and you can change these things kind of in bulk. Same with the recommended assignment. You want to just click into it, and you can see what policy it has. If it has the unpenalized policy, well, then you would want to change your assignments, because if the first two are like that, well, they're probably all like that. And so what you can do is you want to set a homework policy for everything but the tests and quizzes, meaning you can click on these sections here because these are things that are not tests and quizzes. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to, I wanted to select here, here, but not here, These are tests and quizzes. I want them to have a test and quiz policy. All of these have things that I might use as homework assignments. And so I'm going to go ahead and after I've clicked those, I'm going to click on Assign and Edit. And I'm going to come over here to the grading settings. And I want to make sure that they all have this homework policy. So I'm going to go ahead and click here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make this change. So I'm going to click Save. So now I know that everything in these folders have the homework policy, that 5% penalty. Next, I'm going to make sure that the tests and quizzes are good. And I think I maybe could just click on the folder. Let's do a little exploration here. I think I could just click on this right here. There's 9 resources selected. I want to come to Assign Edit, and then I'm going to come over to the grading setting. Now I want to make these have the test and quiz policy. Also, you might want to set your own policy. I used Achieve to teach college in my college course, so I had to create some of my own policies. It's really easy to create your test quiz policy. If you want to create a new one, you can. It's easy to do. It's right there. You can put it at your name. You can call it whatever you want, whether you want to allow retests or not, whether you want the students to be able to see the solutions right after they submit. I don't recommend that because they might finish at different times. Directly after each student's due date. I don't even I like to do it after the whole class is done because I want everybody to finish their test or quiz before the solutions are visible. You might do a time limit. I did time limits. It will put a little clock. Your students will get used to be able to work and see how their time is counting down. You can also do things like randomize the order. That's nice because you don't want the students maybe working on the same exact question at the same exact time. So you can select randomize order. Okay, so you can update those and make your own grading policy. I'm going to click cancel because I don't want to keep I don't want to keep this. Okay, so I'm going to go back into this and I'm going to go over to the grading setting tab. And let's go ahead and I'm just going to make it the pre-built policy of that. Test and quiz, save. Now it's nice to note that you will be able to do things like give extensions. You can give like early access, you can give late access and things like that. Now, another thing that's really helpful to know how to do is how to formally assign things in Achieve. So if I go into this and I want to officially assign, so I know that on a certain date, I want my kids to do this test. So I'm going to assign it. This will put it on a calendar for them. Also, it will allow you to control when they see it and when they don't. So I'm going to assign this to the students. Let's see. Let's suppose that my students, my girls go back to school this day. So I'm going to go ahead and set it at this day. And I want it to be due at the end of class. Maybe that would be at like 2:59 or let's go like 2 o'clock. I always put 100 points because it's easy to scale. 100 points. Make visible to students. No. I only want, this is a test. I don't want my students to see it all the time. I want it to be visible from, at this day, from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock. 1 o'clock. And it's going to close at 2 o'clock. That means it will not open for these students. They won't be able to see it in their Achieve program until 1 o'clock. Then it'll just pop into their program. If you need to create any student exceptions, this right here, I don't have any students in my course right now, but their names would pop up here. You can give them a different due date. You can give them a different visibility. Also, there'll be options in there to do time extensions and things like that. But before you could do a time extension, you'd have to set a time. So you have to choose a grading policy that is timed, and then you would have the option to give a time extension, more time. You can also use a response lockdown browser, and you can just double check that the settings are as you want them to be. So this one has no time limit. If I would have selected the one that has a time limit, I would have an option to give certain students extra time. Okay, so you have all these options. I'm going to go ahead and save. So by giving this a date and a formal, oops, what did I do wrong? Oh, I'd have to remove. I was playing around too much. Okay. So by doing this, you can give this assignment to your students formally, and they would have this pop up on their calendar, and it gives you control so they don't see this until the date. Okay. I think I'm going to have to cancel out of that. Okay, so you can formally assign things to your students. You can also do this in bulk, and you can really very much, you have a lot of control over the features that you have as you are assigning things. Okay, so next I want to show you what you can see about your students and also how you can score things in Achieve. To do this, I'm going to have to go to a course where I had my students. So TPS8, I don't have any students in that course. So I'm going to go to a new course, and I'm also going to need to blur out things so that I do not show in this video student responses. So you're going to see a little bit of blurring in this next part of the video. But I have students here in this TPS7 course, and I will be able to show you what I can see and learn about my students in this course. And yours would look kind of similar. Now keep in mind, remember I teach college, and so I had to construct this in a 15-week format to cover the topics in a college setting. But let's go ahead and look at chapter 1. I taught this as a Tuesday-Thursday format, and I basically structured this exactly like I wanted my kids to have it. So this is the assignment that goes with the Tuesday lesson. This is the assignment that goes with the Thursday lesson. I gave them access here to the ebook and the Tech Corner videos, and then if they wanted to watch any of the exercise videos and example videos. So they had access to this. I liked to set due dates for the assignments, and so that would keep my kids accountable and put it on their calendar. Let's take a look at this particular assignment and see how my kids did. So I'm going to click into it, and there are 20 questions. Remember, I taught college, and this was like a Tuesday lesson, homework assignment. So what I can see is that I had 50 students complete this particular assignment, and their responses are right here. So let's see. Here they are. Okay, so I'm not going to scroll a ton because it makes my blurring very hard work. So I'm going to just kind of keep this as steady as possible, but you can see kind of at a glance that my students did pretty well, because anything that's a dark green means they got it right on the first try. And as it took more tries for them, the circle changes color. And so if I were to scroll down, I could get a real quick glance and see how my students did. Also, there's an option right here under question overview, so you can easily see the questions and also know how the students did. So there are 48 of my students got this question correct. There's 2 that have this question unanswered. And if I click here, I can actually get at a glance all the questions that were on this particular assignment, and I can see how green they are. Did the students eventually get this question correct? Now, I can also thumb through them if I want to actually have a little refresher of what the questions are, and I can see how the students did on each particular question. And this information is really neat, and it's really nice to be able to see at a glance how the students did, but you might like to have some more numbers. So here we have more of the quantitative data under this updated view. And when I click on this updated view, it gives me lots of summary information. I see what the class average is. 2.2% got it correct on the first try. I think that might mean like the entire assignment correct on the first try, which is actually really quite impressive given there were 20 questions. The students spent 3 hours about on this particular assignment, and that doesn't mean a lot to me because if they leave their browser open, it will count the time. However, I'd be kind of curious to know what's going on with the student that completed it in like 10 minutes or so. That makes me a little curious. And then the students might be just quite fast, but then we can see. So you can kind of see how the students did. Students that have this, it doesn't mean anything to me. That just means they maybe left their browser open. Top questions to review. Let's go ahead and see this in more detail. So there are 20 questions, and I love this graphic because I can see how my students did on the first try compared to how they did eventually. This is the demonstration. This demonstrates how powerful the feedback is, because while my students, only 52% got this question correct on the first try, using the feedback, 93% of my students were able to figure it out and get this correct. I also can see how many tries it took my students on average to get the question right and how much time. Again, high numbers don't mean a lot, but low numbers, it tells me that the students on average were getting the question right fairly quickly. I'm going to go back to the classic view so that I can demonstrate a little bit more detail. Okay, so I'm going to open up this first student's assignment. And I want to show you what we can see about her performance. Now I have a lot of these questions cleared. You'll understand why in just a minute, why I have so many of them blanked out. It's not that this student didn't complete them. I've been clearing them as I've been giving tours of Achieve. So I can see that the student got 100%, and I modified the score in a previous tour. And I can see how the student has done on this particular assignment. This one, the student did not get this question right on the first try. It took them 2 tries. And it's pretty neat that if you click here under my answer, you can see what they said on the first try. Oh, they might have actually not scrolled down. Sometimes the students might think that there's just, if they can't see this whole thing, they might think that's all there is. But there's actually more down here at the bottom. And so then they're like, oh, there was more. Okay, and they answered this one correctly and they completed the rest of it. If I flip to a new student, this is one where I haven't played around with as much as I did on this previous one. Let's see, this question, the student took, oh, she got it right on the second try. So she got some feedback here and then she got this question right. It's really helpful to be able to see what they have done as they continue to try on particular questions, because then you can kind of maybe gauge where their misunderstanding was. But you also don't have to dig into this unless the student has a question. The computer is going to guide them and give them assistance. This particular student took 3 attempts to get this question right. So we could see what they said on the first question. And the second question, by the way, individuals is now called observational units. So in TPS8, you will see the language is updated to match the new CED. Okay, so let's suppose that that this was a test. And let's suppose that you need to score the FRQs. And so again, I'm going to have to do a lot of supposing here because I don't have an FRQ on this particular assignment. But let's suppose that this assignment was open-ended. This question here was open-ended. And you need to give it a score because the computer will not score an open-ended question. So it's very easy to do that. So let's suppose this was open-ended. You read and you're like, okay, well, this student got this question entirely correct. So what you do is you click on Edit Question Score. And you can say, okay, well, the student got this question entirely correct. So it's 100%. If you want to write them a little comment, you can write them a comment. Then you click Save. And that's saved. So you just scored it. And then you can click right here and go to the next kid. Same question, because the computer is going to keep them in order for you. It's kind of like reading at the exam where you just get paper after paper. You read what this student said. Okay, this student, they grouped up one of the things. They grouped up individuals. They got like a third of it. Let's say that they got like a 67% on this question. They got 2 out of 3. I'm going to click Save. And there's the score. It's that easy to score the FRQs. So you just read what they wrote, you click Edit, you give them their score. Maybe this student got like a 90%. You can give them a comment to explain why. Click Save, and you move on to the next paper. So that's that simple. You just flip and score until you've scored them all, until you got through the whole class. So you just go focus on that one question, and then if the second question is also an FRQ, then you go to it, and then you just again flip through the kids, scoring as you go. And it's very easy to be able to score the FRQs. Now, besides all of these cool goodies and things like that, there's even more information that you can learn about your students. Now, let me show you one more thing in this updated view, and then I want to show you something in the left panel. So if I scroll down, and then I'm going to kind of keep my thing steady. Okay, so you can see how the students are doing on their average correct on their first try. They're highlighting some problems at the beginning here. Their score eventually, whether they gave up or not, how much time they spent. So you can see what student had that 10 minutes, had that assignment done in 10 minutes. This assignment actually wasn't done completely. They only did 4 questions, but they did 4 questions in 10 minutes and then they stopped. And so you can see, when they first opened it, when they last opened it. So there's lots of details in here that you get to see about your kids. Now, another cool view whenever we're talking about things that you can learn about your kids is over here in the left panel. There's a section in here called Reports. And reports are super neat. And so these are summary reports. So I'm going to first click on Assignment Performance. Now I have it currently on their Chapter 1-2 test, but you can look at any particular assignment. We were just looking at Chapter 1, Day 1, but let's look at the test. These are just their cumulative results. So how did my students score on their first test? Well, here's the distribution of scores. There's your A's, B's, C's, D's, and F's. How much time did they take? Well, they kind of can show the different results. It's on like a dot plot. I find this graphic to be super interesting. How did they do compared to how much time they spent? Isn't that neat that the students who were the fastest on the test tended to perform about equally as well as the students who took a long time? To me, that tells me that, at least for my college kids, they kind of knew how fast they can go to be able to work their way through and think carefully to get it right. The students were confident. They were just able to go pretty quick. These students were maybe not as confident. They took their time, but they just almost did equally as well. And so I thought that's just so neat. And then there's all kinds of interesting things you can learn. It summarizes how your students are doing. And so it's just so neat to be able to get this type of information so quickly and so easily, and you can choose whatever time frame that you want. And then there's different reports and things like that you can play with. But the insights are just so cool, and you can just select whatever assignment you want. Now, one thing I want to emphasize before I leave my TPS8 course with my students. So one of the benefits of the penalty is that it motivates the students to try to do their absolute best. And I would tell my college students that if they ever want to improve their score, all they need to do is ask me to reset questions for them, and I would happily reset them, and they can do the questions again. So suppose you give your students some type of assignment and they want to improve their score. Of course, you can use their scores that you get in whatever manner that you want to. But my college kids would not only do the questions, but they would want to do them again to improve their score. This never happened amazingly never happened whenever I gave my students paper and pencil homework, or even if they were just answering open-ended, like, writing their answers down on an iPad or something where they have some PDF and they're just answering the questions. I found that my students went from trying to get their homework done to trying to get it right. And that was a really big game changer. And so if you use that 5% penalty, you don't have to feel bad. And if you want to let your kids redo questions, it's very easy to do that. So all you do is click into any assignment, just like I just did, and you go to the responses tab. And you can see by the color green of the circles if a student has had multiple tries or not. So suppose a student wants to redo the questions that they missed. So I'm going to click on this edit, and I can go to, and this is why these are empty. I've already demonstrated how to reset. But let's suppose that the student, I'm sorry about the black thing. This is a little bit of a glitch that the programmers are working on. Let's suppose that Abigail here wants to redo a couple questions that she missed. And so all you do is click on those questions. And by the way, this is not just a black box. This really shows you as I hover information about the question. It's just that right now it's not supposed to be black on black. But the programmers hopefully will be updating and fixing that. So we'll be able to see a little bit better. But you can be able to just click on anything that they want to have another chance at, and then click reset, and those things go away. But make sure you click save because you want to lock it in. And so now those are blank. So now next time this student clicks into the program, all of these questions are clear and they can retry and improve their score. It will be the same question as before, but who cares? They're getting to do the question again and they're practicing it again. They're improving their understanding. They're improving their score. It's just a beautiful thing. So I would do this often with my students, and that's just an option that you have within Achieve that is just super cool. Okay, so now I'm going to go back out of this and into the TPS8 course. So I'm going to go back to the home page. And I want to show you how you can make your own assignment, because some of you out there might be power users and you might want to make an assignment all on your own. To make an assignment from scratch, something brand new, maybe you want to make a test or a quiz. You come over in this left panel and you can click on Create Content. And you can say, well, do you want to make an assessment? And by the way, if you want to add any files to your course, you can do that right here under that Add Content. Upload a file. You can post any file you want to and put it onto your course so your kids can see it, download it. That's easy to do. But let's suppose you want to make an assignment. Everything is called an assessment, whether it's a test or a quiz, it's an assessment. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this. And as it loads, I'm going to call it, let's call it midterm practice. And this will put it at your homework policy or the quiz. So let's say we're making just a homework assignment. I'm going to go ahead and create. Let's add some questions. Okay, thanks. Let's go to the question bank. Okay, now we want to make a practice review. Well, I'm just going to pick some questions from, early on and give them a little practice set. So I could use this, by the way, Exam Builder, which is like a random selection. But remember, they're going to treat every question equally. So they're going to treat all, this like basically like simple random sample. But you don't maybe want to give the questions that were book-based because maybe they already did those. So I might not want to use this. I might not want an SRS. I might want to handpick. And it's really easy and it doesn't take very much time. So I'm going to just go into this additional exercises. You could flip through them and add them, or you can kind of just see what the descriptions are. Suppose you want to do like a little flip through. Anything that you want to add is just right here, add to assessment. So maybe you like this question, I'm going to add. I'm going to maybe flip, yeah, I like, I don't like. And you can just kind of look, or you can just kind of glance through here. So I've added one so far. Then I want to pick something from 1C. I'm going to pick out of this additional exercises. Maybe I want to put this one and this one. I'm going to click add. So now I'm up to 3 questions. See how easy it is to make an assignment. Maybe that's all I want out of Unit 1. I'm going to pick something out of Unit 2. Let's see, I'm going to go into additional exercises. Again, we have a lot to choose from. There are many exercises in each of these extra little exercise buckets. I'm going to go ahead and take those 2. Now I'm up to 5. Very easy to make an assignment. All you just do is pick and add. Okay, so now we have our assignment. And if you want, you can look at it as a student and make sure you are happy with it. So you might be like, okay, well, what do I do now? And this is the part that can seem a little tricky because I've already made the assignment, but what is it? Where is it? Oh, by the way, I don't want it to be unpenalized. I want to use the homework policy. I'm going to go ahead and click save. Okay, so let's go back to the course. Now, what we have created is going to be sitting in your content. So you've just kind of basically created our resource. And you were super talented and you made a custom content. Go you. Apparently I have done this before a couple of times, but I think this is probably the one that I just made. So I'm going to click right here, add to course. And I'm going to go to the course. And ta-da! There it is, midterm practice. Maybe I want that to be right up top, or maybe I want to stick it in a folder. If you want to move it, you can easily move it by clicking move to unit, and it will allow you to put it, where you want to put it. Maybe you don't want it to be hidden. Maybe you want your students to see this. So you can assign it. By the way, if you just make it available, that will unhide it. You would just like verbally. So let me go ahead and show you what I mean by that. If I do that, then it's there. You could verbally say, okay, I want you to do the midterm practice. By the way, you can see what this looks like to your kids. If you go to student preview over on the left, it'll show you what the course looks like to your students. So they can see these folders, and if they click into them, they can see what is in each of these. So here they can see all of these. You can just verbally say that unless you want to put the due dates on it. It's also important just to take a look inside your test and quiz. You're a snooping kid, right? We don't want them to see that. I might have unhid them. And so I'd be like, oh no, I want to make sure I hide those tests and quizzes. I don't want my kids to see that. So we don't want them looking in there at those tests and quizzes. So if you go in, you can see what your kids can see. And if I click right up here, I'm going to return to instructor view. And I'm going to demonstrate how to hide those again, because you might be like at that point, oh my gosh, how did she do that? So in this Unit 1, Part 1, tests and quizzes, I'm going to click on that. And actually, if I open it, if the word hidden is not there, well, the kids can see it. It's not hidden. So you want to make sure you just look through carefully, make sure that you have everything set just the way you want. So tests and quizzes, I'm going to come right here and I'm going to go bulk. I'm going to edit. I'm going to go through with it because this really should be this way. Hidden, save. So now it says hide from students. I'm going to click save up here. All right, so now let's take a look. In our tests and quizzes folder, they are all hidden. That means the students cannot see them. And so want to double check things. But that's how you can make your own assignment. It really is that easy. You can set your due dates. If you want to actually formally assign it to the kids, you can go through all of this, and it will put it on the kids' calendar. Now, I've talked about the calendar a little bit. See how we have this view by course content? Well, they can actually choose a calendar view, and it would like say when things are due, which is just super neat. It will also do this view of like what's coming up each week. They have all these options. Personally, I kind of like this course content view, but you can let your kids know that there are some options there and how they view the course. Alrighty, now last thing. If you would like to make a test or a quiz, you want to follow the same process, but I want to show you something super fancy, and it's how you can use randomization and make your own test or quiz. Okay, so I'm going to click on Create Content again, and I'm going to make an assignment, an assessment. Remember, it'll let you choose between test or quiz. All right, this time I'm going to call it, I'm going to show you if I could do a unique name. This is be my demonstration quiz for AP statistics teachers who want to go and make their own tests and quizzes. I'm going to check this because I want it to actually be a quiz or a test, and create. I'm going to go to the question bank just like we did before. Okay, right now there's nothing on it. All right, so I am going to make a test or a quiz, but I want to show you how you can do this using randomization. So in Unit 1, Part 1, let's suppose that we want to, I'm going to use the additional exercises that are definitely not in the book, and maybe I want to have my students do a question on, so that you have a whole bunch to choose from. Maybe I want to do a question on percentile. Percentile, 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 percentile. You could look at these, of course, if you want to look at them and just double check that they are equivalent. And I can also see right over here that they're all multiple choice. I want my kids to do a multiple choice question on percentile. But I want them to have I want the computer to select one out of this batch. This changes topic right here. So I have all these to choose from. I just picked 5. I want the computer to pool or group. And so when I do that, I'm going to be creating a group. I'm going to call this percentile, because that's the topic. I want the computer to pick 1 out of this batch of 5. I could have it pick 2 or more, but I'm going to have it pick 1 out of the 5. That means I have 1 question on the test. However, this test now has a group of 5, and it's going to pick 1. So that means that when your students come into class and they go to open up this test, there's a 20% chance that they will get any one of these questions. So for 5 students, will probably be all, if they're students working side by side, they'll probably get a different question. But we know that these questions are all basically the same, and they are not in the book. So now we have 1 question ready on our fancy schmancy randomized pooled test. I'm going to go back to the question bank and I'll demonstrate. Let's do a second topic. All right, let's see. I will pick a new section. Let's go to like 1E. I'm going to again go out of the additional exercises. Okay, let's see. We've got z-scores covered in here and comparing distributions. Okay. Now it's important to note kind of like what type of question it is, especially if you want them to be equivalent. There's lots of multiple choice. Of course, you can filter any of these, by the way. There's ways you can filter by question type. You can like look for the types of questions you want. So that's really super advanced if you want to do that. Okay, let's see. Comparing variability. And this is comparing center, comparing variability, comparing distributions, compare. Okay. All right, and I can see like how involved a question might be, so I'm going to pick some of these ones that are maybe have a little bit more of like different modules. I can see they're like a couple different things that are going on in these questions. They're not just like a 1 question, but they're maybe just a couple. By the way, by selecting the test or quiz policy, automatically they won't get feedback. Test or quiz policy is going to give them 1 try and no feedback. So that will, you don't have to worry about the fact there's feedback built in. If you would have made this a homework, they would get feedback. But by making it a test or a quiz policy, the feedback will be turned off. Okay, so you can select as many as you want. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and create a pool. And this will be the topic of comparing distributions. And of course, you will maybe read carefully and see that they're basically fairly similar questions. I'm going to pick one out of these 4 and click Save. Now they have 2 questions on their quiz. They'll get 1 out of these 5. They'll get 1 out of these 4. And that's all you do. You just keep building and building. And whenever you're done, you say, okay, well, I am satisfied. I'm going to go back to here. And I'm going to go where I have my my resources. I've just created a resource. It's under custom content. Here's my demonstration quiz. I'm going to go ahead and add that to the course. That will now be on the very top of my course, right here, automatically hidden, because you want to show the students this when you're ready to show them. You want to change the settings here. You can assign it to the students. You get to pick your date. You get to pick your points. You can pick that the solutions will be hidden until a certain date. You get all your student exceptions, and so you can adjust and customize so that the students will not have access until you want them to, and they won't be able to see the solutions until you are ready. Okay, so that is how you make a randomized test or quiz. Alrighty, so this is a very thorough, this is for the power users of Achieve. I hope this is helpful in getting you started. You can understand what resources you have available to you, how you can use the ebook, how the course is set up in terms of content, all of the goodies in here in terms of the tests and the quizzes and the various versions. Some of the more how-to things we went over is how to hide things, how to change the grade settings on things, how to view a course from the eyes of your students, and how to view assignments in the eyes of your students, and all you can learn about your kids after they've completed an assignment. I love Achieve. This has totally revolutionized how my students have performed in the classroom. The depth of understanding that they have from doing these assignments and then coming to class so well prepared, in combination with the lesson handouts, all the prepared tests and quizzes, all of the AP practice questions in here, cumulative exams, the Frappy questions. This is a powerhouse. This program is a powerhouse. And I hope that this helps you to feel successful and ready to start your school year. If you have any additional questions or you want to see any additional demonstrations, don't hesitate to email me. My email address is on the screen, and I will do my best to create any additional videos that are needed or answer any questions about the course. So I hope you enjoy Achieve, especially this TPS8 version, which aligns with the new CED. Alrighty, let me know if you have any questions. Good luck and have a great school year.